From the first week I already noticed that something is wrong. City Hall's been unfair to us. I mean, we're barely making it now. I'm basically just working for them. I mean, that's crazy, right?
We all know the dangers of this job. You wake up every day, read something else in the paper that they want to do to you. And at the end of the day, people are pitted against each other on the streets as competition. It doesn't exactly breed unity and brotherhood.
We're tired of being exploited and used as ATM machines. We're not tax collectors for the city. We're here to work to put money in our pockets, not the city's pockets, but our pockets.
I'm at a time in life now where I'd like to take it a little easier, but I find that I'm working harder than I ever have. But that doesn't compare at all to the guys that have 3 or 4 kids. The pressure on them to make money is enormous.
This is why we're here, to be heard.
In normal times, the taxicab business employs nearly 100,000 drivers. In big cities, large companies maintain thousands of cabs. But whether a driver works for a large company or for himself, he sets his own working hours and conditions. This feeling of independence and individual responsibility is common to all fields of motor transportation. Although the average taxi driver works about 10 hours a day, only half of that time is actually spent driving. The rest of the time he is waiting for calls. Fares are usually set by local ordinance and are based on distance traveled and other factors.
The city of Chicago should rise up to defend us.
City of Chicago?
Yes, I don't mean city officials. I mean the people of Chicago should rise up.
Yeah, they're gonna meet us over there.
Because
you're just the special. You're the special one here.
The special one?
Yes.
Okay.
These are the executive branch.
All right.
We are the leaders.
Okay, my name is Faiz Kozandar. I'm the chairman of United Taxi Driver Community Council. An organization was founded 4 years ago to protect taxi drivers in the city of Chicago and secure that they are represented and have a seat at the table with the city. The drivers are outraged. The drivers deserve to be heard and deserve to have a fair hearing to secure a livable wage for the drivers.
To me looks like we are going to be slaves in this country again, just like 100 years ago. When Martin Luther King did for us, when Martin Luther King, you know what I'm saying, and Malcolm X, the city, the mayor, and the big guy.
Eric P. Martin. I'm a cab driver. Well, actually, I'm a filmmaker, and I drive a cab for a living. And that's who I am. I've been driving full time every day for the last month and a half. You know, to earn $100, sometimes we have to be on the street, 20 hours. My average day, they all mend together. I lease a cab 24 hours. Put it this way. Sometimes I don't go home. I'm in the cab, out on the streets for, days at a time, because it takes that amount of time, to earn a decent living.
Okay.
You're 10, right?
Okay, I spearheaded this whole thing. Every year when we're denied a fare increase, we got to work extra hours just to keep our heads above water. Look at the Kangaroo Court on 400 West Superior. They don't give us a fair hearing, and they're finding us guilty on purpose. They're finding us guilty just for the purpose of getting our money. We're here to work to put money in our pockets, not the city's pockets, not the cab company's pockets, but our pockets. Back in 2007, when I petitioned for a fare increase, we had a hearing, they denied us, and they raised our fines 33%. We're tired of being exploited and used as ATM machines.
I decided to drive a taxi. My ex-husband was a taxi driver, and so I knew that that was an option. There was an economic study done by a company called Coghill Capital Management, and they did this study. Coghill did this study in cooperation with the City of Chicago, and it was, I believe, done to develop a financial model for the industry to follow. So I attended a meeting held by Coghill, and their findings were that cab drivers made a very low amount of money. The results in that meeting showed it was somewhere in the $3 range. Later on, they changed it to $4.08 an hour. Hearing that number, that is $4.08 an hour, that clearly is far below minimum wage. And so I decided to file a federal lawsuit against the City of Chicago for violating that federal law of minimum wage. And so it has been filed. The case is still in court, and I'm not sure how far we'll get, but it looks like it's a promising attempt to make some very serious changes for the industry. And so I don't know if it'll solve all of the problems, but I think that it definitely addresses a major problem within the industry, which is that cab drivers don't make enough money.
I am a professor of labor and employment relations at the University of Illinois.
Okay. And you did a study on the taxi industry. Can you tell us a little about that?
Sure. So the study was a compilation of 4 reports that we did. The first report looked at income and expenses, the actual earning potential of a cab driver. A second report focused on the amount of violence, safety issues in driving a cab. A third topic focused on leases and the cost of a lease, the various business models that were represented by different leases, whether these leases were in compliance with city ordinances. And then a final report looked at the engagement that cab drivers had with law enforcement, how often they were ticketed, whether they felt harassed. And these 4 reports were the product of nearly 1,000 extensive interviews. So the typical cabbie was out there for 13 hours, 6 days a week, 11 hours of time on the road before a cab driver began to accrue any revenue above expenses. When you added up the hours of work, 1.5 full-time jobs. If you look at it in terms of revenue on an hourly basis, it was somewhere between $3 and $5 an hour, which is below both the federal and the state minimum wage.
The city knows from your study and their study that cab drivers are earning less than the minimum wage.
They do know that. That's not even in dispute. It's not in dispute. And yet the city is instituting policies that guarantee higher expenses but don't guarantee a minimum net revenue.
I'm Commissioner Krimble, and I've been the commissioner for a little over a year now. And as you well know, we've done a lot. The very first thing we did was address the taxi industry, and what we wanted to do was make it simpler, fairer, and easier. So that's what we did. And so I'm going to run through the new rules, not the rules and regs necessarily, but the ordinance from which the rules and regs follow. Yes?
Commissioner, one of your duties as Commissioner defined by the ordinance, specifically Section 9112.220, is to, quote, provide safe and adequate taxi cab service within the city by providing lessees with an opportunity to earn fair and reasonable income. So in drafting this new ordinance, you use the City Consulting Alliance and also environmental impact. And the study that they, after the conclusion of their study, they found that drivers were earning on an average of $4.08 to $5.43 per hour. Also, Dr. Bruno, professor of University of Illinois, who testified.
We interviewed him, we talked with him, and we took into account the entire report. So we spoke with everyone that he spoke with.
Having that knowledge of, earned wages by taxi drivers from one that you've commissioned, study that you commissioned, do you feel that the wages are fair and reasonable? And I say this respectfully, is denying a fair increase for the last 6 years to a population which is mainly 95% immigrants, a way of the city participating in modern day sharecropping and exploitation of immigrants?
Well, first of all, let's be clear, because the last fair raise was in 2009. The surcharge was a fair increase. Let's not get that wrong.
Wait, that was no fair increase.
And that was in 2009.
No.
Second, there's a hearing. Alderman Beal is already going to be having a hearing on rates. I'm not going to address it here. I'm not.
So this isn't a forum to address questions regarding this?
No, you have a forum for that. You'll have that. You'll have a hearing, and that's the Transportation Committee and City Council will have that hearing. They are committed to having that hearing.
What about transparency that you just talked about?
Talk to the Department of Transportation. They will hold the hearing. If I knew when it was going to be, I would tell you, and that would be transparent. I don't know when it's going to be. And I'm telling you honestly, I do not know. I know that he's planning one, and I know that he's planning it for after July 1st, because he's waiting until we have all our rules and regs and things worked through, so that when he sits down and does it, we have as much information as possible.
So
that's been committed to already.
Even with the dollar increase in 2009, drivers still earn below the federal and state minimum wage. So do you feel that's fair and reasonable?
If you are asking me for my personal opinion, there's a couple of factual errors in your statement. Number one, the minimum wage is $5 an hour for professions that get a tip. Okay? If you don't want anyone to ever tip you again, and instead get $8 an hour, then you're talking something totally different. So let's be careful here. And when we start talking about how much drivers make, I will tell you, the range goes from here to here. And you know what the difference is? Whether or not that driver is actually working, has a marketing plan, is taking customers. Not all grocery store owners make the same amount of money. Not all doctors make the same. Not all of anybody make the same. It's always a range, and it depends on how you run your business. Now, next question.
Independent driver are driving on the road is beyond the cause.